Lesson 7 begins now. Today, on Japanese from Zero, we will be discussing the connection but. I screwed up. I meant to say the but sentence connector. All right. So remember, you do need to know ha, hi, hu, he, ho, and ba. Wait a minute. Lesson 7, right? Older version of the book, but it still will be. Oh, you know what? This is wrong. You need to know mami me mo. Oh, look at that. Yes, wait, no, that's legit. That was right. Because we're doing a part 2 from the same lesson. I think that's what happened, and I got confused. So in lesson 7, we need to know ha hi hu he ho, babi bubebo, and papi pupepo. But more importantly, we need to know this new word, demo. We also need to know I and yoi. I, yoi. So I and yoi both mean the same thing. However, when you're saying good, you typically only say I. We're going to use yoi in just a second though. And oki, big. And chisai. Look at that. So much hiragana on the screen. It's nice. So let's do some practice first about how to make these negative, which is what we were doing in the last video. So oki, drop the E, you have oki. Okikunai. Okikunai desu. It's not big. I don't have anything here to show you to demonstrate not big. But let's just say I'm Donald Trump and my hand is not big. So I could say te ga okikunai desu. Te ga okikunai desu. I mean, that is the joke. That is the joke that everyone says about Donald Trump. So chisai. Chisai means small. Okay. Chisa. Drop the E. Chisa. Chisakunai. Not small. Chisakunai. Okay. Now, with good, E, there is E and yoi, right? Well, for the negative, you use the yoi one. So you say, yo, yokunai. Now, you can say ikunai. You will hear ikunai, but it's way more natural and common to say yokunai for not good. Okay? So it's normally, you just drop the E and add kunai to any adjective and it works, but this is kind of an exception. E becomes yokunai. Okay? Now, let me ask you a question. How do I say yasai, which means vegetable? How do I say not a vegetable? Do you drop the E and say yasakunai? No. This dropping of the E thing only works for adjectives right now. Okay? You have to say yasai janai. Just trying to keep you on your toes. Yasai janai. Because yasai is not an adjective. It's not an E adjective. So it would never ever make a conjugation, right? So it's yasai janai. Now, excuse me. Before we get to using demo, we did talk about wa and ga usage in a prior lesson, but we are going to do it again. Because we're going to add a little bit to it, okay? And it's always good to review these, okay? And I'm going to kind of put numbers on these rules, okay? So number 1, you can never use wa directly after a question word unless you're that guy in YouTube making a comment and not even watching the video. So for example, nani ga suki desu ka? Because nani is a question word, you cannot have wa there. It's even if you're showing emphasis, even if you're using any of the other rules that wa can be used by, you can never, ever, ever say nani wa. Unless there is a famous StarCraft player named Naniwa. Just want to throw it out there. But that is not what we're talking about. So, nani ga suki desu ka? Nani ga suki desu ka? Doko ga oishii desu ka? Where tastes good? Nani iro ga ii desu ka? What color is good? Nani iro ga ii desu ka? Nezumi wa nan desu ka? Now, why did I throw that sentence there? The first 3 sentences, we have nani ga, doko ga, and nani iro ga. And a lot of people confuse this rule and think, oh, well, if there's a question word, in the sentence, you can't use wa. That's not what I said. That's not the rule. The rule is you can never use wa directly after a question word. In the sentence, nezumi wa nan desu ka, which means what is a nezumi? What is a rat? But we're assuming you just heard the word nezumi, you don't know what it means, and you're asking, nezumi wa nan desu ka? We have a question word, nan. But why we're using wa? Because that's the topic. We're saying, what is this thing called nezumi? And it's not a question word. Nihon wa doko desu ka? Looking at a map, where's Japan? Nihon wa doko desu ka? Budou wa nani iro desu ka? Budou wa nani iro desu ka? What color are grapes? Two answers for that, right? Budou wa midori desu. Or budou wa murasaki desu. Second rule, wa is used for comparison and emphasis. Now this rule, we haven't needed until now. We really haven't, okay? We've said that we can use ga for emphasis. For example, are you Tanaka-san? Iie, kare ga Tanaka desu, right? You could do it then, but also wa does the same thing. This is where it gets complicated because wa is also used for emphasis. So let's look at a sentence. Hopefully that'll help. Inu ga suki desu. That's your basic sentence. I like dogs. Demo is a comparator word. It's also a connector. It connects two sentences. It's the beginning of one sentence. It's connecting that first sentence to it. But neko wa kirai desu. Now I'm using wa to emphasize. Okay? Inu ga suki desu. Demo neko wa kirai desu. Kore ga ii desu. This is good. Demo, kore wa yokunai desu. But this, it isn't good. So that's where we're using ga, right? We're using ga in the first sentence, and then that kind of switches the next sentence to wa, right? We're basically using wa when emphasizing what normally would be ga in that sentence, right? Now we can have a sentence where we can have two sentences connected that have was in both of them too. It's totally fine. Watashi wa 15 sai desu. I am 15. It doesn't mean that you switch to the ga to make the emphasis. You wouldn't say, demo, oniisan ga. You wouldn't. It's oniisan wa 16 sai desu. The number one way that you use emphasis is wa. But as I've shown you in the prior video, you can use ga to emphasize. That's where it gets tricky. It's not easy to know when to use wa and ga. And honestly, the fifth rule will explain it all. Wa and ga can both be in the same sentence. This is not a real rule, but I put it here because a lot of people sometimes get confused. They don't think that you can have them in the same sentence, but you can. Watashi wa koko ga suki desu. I like it here. Watashi wa koko ga suki desu. Watashi no tomodachi wa Pokemon ga kirai desu. What? How can you hate Evie? How can you hate? How can she slap? I don't know if you saw that video on the internet. Every time I say, how can something, I always want to say, how can she slap? Go look that up on YouTube right now. How can she slap? Trust me, you'll like it. How can she slap? How can you not like Pokemon? Come on, they're cute, they're adorable. Watashi wa Pokemon ga suki desu. Demo, watashi no tomodachi wa Pokemon ga kirai desu. Alright? Number 4. Wa should be used with new topics and conversations. We talked about that. We don't have to go into depth, into detail about that. In another video, we talked about it that typically, because you're talking about a new topic, you're gonna, not typically, almost all the time, you're gonna start a conversation with wa. Then the next thing can be ga. It's a follow-up thing. I feel like that might have confused you a little bit, but go watch the video and you'll see what I mean. Here's the most important rule. Wa and ga are often dropped in casual conversations. They really are. Japanese drop them from time to time. Okay? They might say, I don't want to give this to you yet. Just trust me. They will drop them. So not only will they drop them, but if you ask a Japanese person to explain the difference between wa and ga, they don't know. They can't explain it. The max they will typically do is the one that everyone says, wa marks the topic and ga marks the subject. But it's not often clear what the subject is, And sometimes when ga is used as emphasis, you're like, well, does that make it the subject now? And when wa is used to emphasize, is that now the subject? No. I mean the topic, sorry. Does that make it a topic? No. Sometimes you're just emphasizing something. So, my advice would be, don't worry too much about this. If you screw up wa and ga, you're going to be okay. If you say, watashi ga neko wa suki desu, they're still going to get it. They're still going to understand what you're saying. It'll sound weird, but they'll understand you. All right, thank you for watching. I have nothing on this back screen. That means I'm out of videos today. This is the last one for today. Thank you for watching. I'll see you all on the next lesson. Remember, please, if you get confused, don't feel bad about asking questions on YouTube or even on the website. And I'll try to answer as many of them as I can. And also, please review. Please go back and review. Because I do feel like I'm explaining it. Sometimes. All right, I'll see you next time. Ja ne.